Hey, what's up, tacticians? Coming at you today to do a short video. I wanted to talk through my top 10 commanders for season 4. It's probably not actually going to be a short video, I'm not going to lie, because I have a lot to say. There's a lot of details and such that I'd like to share, just to kind of set things up for you. Um, so you know who I am and the journey that I've been on real quickly. So that kind of gives you kind of a guiding principle as to how I've arrived where I am in the game. Season 1, I played as dwarves, so I got a taste of that T4 Iron Warrior. Season 2, I played Rohan, got me a taste of some of the martials. And then Season 3, I played as Lothlorien and got a little bit of that March Warden flavor. And gotta say, my favorite definitely has been Lothlorien. I really enjoyed playing as that faction. It just unfortunately turned out to be a disastrous season because of the people that I was forced to play with. And that's just the way that it was. And it's all water under the bridge now. We're going to move forward. We're getting ready to leave Bag End here in almost 24 hours on the dot. I mean, it's really exciting. We're excited. The team that I'm on and are very excited because we've been sitting here at Bag End for like 3, maybe even 4 weeks. I don't even remember anymore what the date was that we finished season 3. Wait, wasn't it there? It was just there. Why don't I just look at it? Yeah. Uh, it says the 17th. I don't believe that, but we'll go with it. So it's about 2 weeks, 2 weeks, something like that. We've been here for a while, so we've been planning and working to upgrade our commanders. And so I'm a light side playing guy, as you can see. So I want to talk through really my top 10 commanders, and really the top 5 are going to be the ones that are actually the ones I'll be using for PvP, and then the other 5 are kind of be extracurricular guys that are like siege specialists or pathers or just for PvE. So as you can see here, I'm going to start with Aragorn. He's going to be probably my scout this season. I'm going to be throwing him all over the place. We're playing War of the Ring, so we're only going to be facing dark side opponents. So I don't have to worry about getting my back stabbed by another light side faction, which is tremendously helpful for players like me, because that wasn't the style of game that I particularly liked playing. So this War of the Ring campaign that the devs are releasing, this is really more the style of gameplay that I was expecting when I started playing this game back in October. So what am I doing with Aragorn? Well, let's talk about, his his setup here, his specializations, his spec, his talents, whatever you want to call them. How I have arranged his ability points. I have maxed out his Andril, the top tier um, R0 title, and its accompanying skills, Call of the Week, and weapons expertise. They're all maxed out. This is going to boost your commander damage output from Aragorn significantly. The next thing you want to do immediately, 2 points in hair, in the hidden air, and then 1 point in the sun and moon splendor. This is what gives you stun immunity against orcs and urukai. So it's going to be really helpful for you as well. And then I have 4 points in here. I had 2 points left over, and I decided to just boost Aragorn's skill damage a little bit higher. But this gives him initiative too, so he's always pretty much going first, which is really nice. And then before I used to put points in Dunedain Chieftain and Nobility, but the way that I'm going to be running Aragorn based upon my gear setup is going to be a little bit different. And so I decided to just go straight into Strider, get that 30% base stats from the equipment. I don't really care, about that, ignoring the race restrictions of equipment that he's wearing. He's not wearing anything evil. I don't need to really do that, but it's cool. And then these other two skills, Precise Blow and Raid, are also going to significantly increase Aragorn's commander damage output. And the way that I have him geared is such that I'm really jacking up his might. This battle axe with the flay ability is going to increase his damage. It's going to ignore 20% of target's defense during the first 4 rounds. So he's going to do more damage during that time. It's going to be really good. And the might is good as well. He needs that. And then for the chest, we're going with the superior hauberk. This is what's going to reduce his burn damage received by 20%, and it's going to give him a bunch more might, and it's going to give defense to the army. So it's really a good chest for him, especially if you're only facing dark side. Because what does dark side do more damage than anything else? The majority of their damage is burn or focus, and some poison depending on who you're facing. So then we go over here to the helmet, and you can see here my intention for Aragorn is to just throw a bunch of knights on him and just launch him into battle and let him go at it. This maxed out full helm decreases the burn, focus, and poison damage received by knights by 60%. That stacks with this 20%. So essentially, my knights are going to have 80% burn damage mitigation from these two pieces of gear. You throw in, when he's maxed out at 50, you throw in the focus, and that's another 8.7%. So all in all, knights on Aragorn this season for me currently will be mitigating 88.7% of all burn damage. It's really good. And then he's also going to be mitigating 60% of focus and poison damage as well on the knights. So basically, I'm just going to be pumping out knights and throwing Aragorn at people, letting them go to town, because it's going to be really tough for evil to kill those knights. And while they're worrying about the knights, Aragorn is just going to have a blast. And then I gave him this accessory just for more might, the focus, army HP, keeping those knights alive even longer, and it even gives him a heal. So I really like my Aragorn. I'm going to probably main him this season along with my number 2 commander. So Aragorn's going to be leading the charge into battle with his knights. And then I'm going to be throwing this guy at you. And I'm going to be basically playing Lothlorien. So you're going to have to deal with March Wardens on Celeborn. And I've buffed his elf army attack and elf allied unit damage as much as I possibly can by giving him this weapon as well as this harp. Would love to get more of these harps so that I can increase that 2% to 4, 6, 8%, but we'll get there. You have to be patient sometimes if you're not a millionaire. And then on the defensive side of things, I've given him the high elf hauberk, so he's going to be mitigating 15% of burn, poison, and focus damage from that on all allies. And then it buffs his defense on elves, and then it gives him a bunch of might, focus, and speed, which is good. And then for the hood, more attack for the ranged, base attack for ranged, +3, that's good. And then every 2 rounds, an 83.3% chance to inflict madness. That's excellent. So he is madness immune and pretty much stun immune, which brings us over to his build, really. I should have done this first, I apologize, but you throw 1 point in the Wise so that he gets his madness immunity. You saw from my stats, he has more than 250. Not as much as 350. Not a big deal. I'm not really super worried about that because most of his army is going to be March Wardens anyway. If you don't have March Wardens, I don't recommend playing Celeborn at all. He's only really viable if you're playing Lothlorien, in my opinion. because he has severe damage issues. You can use him as another light side faction and just make him super tanky, but he's not going to do a lot of damage for you. So he might be a really good pather or someone to just use as like an annoying stopgap while you're bringing other better powerful attackers into position or to hold somebody for a little bit while your friends come and bail you out, or just purely to troll and be annoying. But otherwise, if you're playing Lothlorien, you can get some really phenomenal damage output out of March Wardens. I mean, I've seen him hit 300,000 damage in a battle with about 2,300 March Wardens in the group. So you want this maxed out, obviously, so that your March Wardens gain initiative. They already have pursuit automatically, so they never miss. They always go first. They're stun immune. Can't go wrong with that. It's really strong. And they want to max out this and this for obvious reasons. And then we go with the guide. So the first 2 rounds, their damage gets buffed by 45% more. And the whole army is stun immune during that time. So that's really good. And then I went with Grey Elf, 14 points so that I could dump 7 more points into this Deadeye to increase range damage by another 21%. Essentially, this build with his specialization, where I've allocated his talent points here, is purely for damage output. There's another build that you can certainly use with him where you don't use the Grey Elf or the Deadeye, and you stick all those points in the Wise and Magical Barrier. That's more of a defensive build with him. And there's going to be different times where that defensive build is going to be beneficial for you, depending on what kind of dark side commanders you're facing, how well geared they are, how they're skilled, etc., what kind of units you're going up against. I pretend to like the nuke better. That's why I have set this way. I had one other point left, and some people might be wondering why I didn't max out Grey Elf and I dumped it in Foresight. And that's just my style, where I don't think that this extra 15 speed and 1% chance for elves to evade damage has as much benefit as when this 10% chance procs for all my units to gain pursuit during the first 4 rounds. So that could be beneficial for, basically I run just all straight heralds and march wardens with him. Occasionally I'll throw a sprinkle of the dwarf mounted unit, the war rams, in there so that you get that 50%, that negative 50% defense debuff on the enemy. But I really honestly don't think that it's beneficial to do that at all, because even in a situation where you're kind of fielding like 1,700 heralds, 500 rams, and like 2,300 march wardens, some kind of distribution like that, the rams just die so fast. It's not even worth it. You might as well just dump those 500 rams into the heralds, or I've liked basically doing like 2,000 heralds and like 2,500 march wardens. So you just want a meat shield in front of the march wardens, and the more march wardens you have, the more damage you're gonna do. And that's really the key to Celeborn success, is just doing a ton of damage during those first 4 rounds and just massacring the opponent as quickly as you can. They're really strong. And then the March Wardens themselves, let's say the enemy chews through all 2,000 of those heralds, because of all the defense that we've added to elven units, they're tough to kill themselves without that meat shield in front. So Celeborn's a really strong hero. I really like him. He directly counters Sauron. So whenever I see Sauron's going at, our Gandalf the Greys, because Gandalf the Grey counters Witch King, when I see the Gandalfs are going down because they're Saurons, then that's a good time to send a Celeborn bomb, some sort of like speeded up march to just go and blast a known Sauron. And this build will do you pretty good. So those are my top 2 commanders, and I know I spent a bunch of time talking about them. My third commander is going to be Eowyn. And that's because from her specialization, she gets stun immunity for the army just from this. And, more damage. You're not with this way of specking her, you're really relying on the army to do damage here. So we're trying to make everything as beefy as we can and jack them up as much as we can. So we jack up our men damage. Predominantly, we're going to be using Cavaliers with Eowyn. So you're relying on them for all the damage. This is going to help, keep them alive. And then you've got your Rohirrim. Get more might. More might for the commander means more damage to the army. And then this obviously jacks up their damage as well. And then you put the other points in Shield Maiden here. That's going to help do damage. Sorry, I misspoke there. It reduces the damage received. You have 40% chance to reduce physical damage by 30%. That's very helpful. The extra focus is also good for the army. It makes them beefier. And then you do defensive stance here, which is really good. Does some physical damage. And then the next damage received, modified by your might stat, is negative 14%. So this can really mitigate a bunch of damage for you heading into round 3. And then the last 2 points I just put in attack vitals. Some people like to put it in cleave. I prefer to have that damage as part of round 1 instead of round 2. It's just personal preference. In terms of her gear, I'm going to show you the helmet right away, just to make you aware that she is, in addition to being completely stun immune, also completely madness immune. At least the army is. She's not. The commander can be stunned and maddened, but I don't have her spec'd to be able to do damage, so I'm not really too concerned with that, other than that, well, she's stunned or maddened, she can't heal, but that should be fine. And then also this helm gives her a bunch of might speed and army defense to the mounted units, which is obviously best in slot for Eowyn. And then I'll draw your attention to her chest, which mitigates focus damage by 60%. It gives her more might, focus, and speed. And then my 2 crappy gold pieces. I've got a sword that I'm working on slowly. I know a lot of people will be yelling at me because they see that spear on Legolas. They say throw the spear into the sword. I am not willing to do that because I just got that spear a week ago, and I'm going to keep it until I use Theoden again in a different season. The other weapon I have here, I'll melt when I have more weapons to be able to put into this. Or this. Really, this is my top priority anyway. So that's where I'm at with that. And that's my choice, and I'm going to stick with it. So y'all can live with it. I appreciate your recommendations. And then I have her Reputation 10 special item, the Rohan's Refuge, the shield. I've jacked it up to 3 stars, but I have not yet gotten the 60 mithril needed to pump that up to a gold star. I'll be looking to do that. I was dumb and threw all my stars, or all my mithril, into this guy, into Haldir. Haldir is going to be like my 6th PvP commander this season. So we've talked about Aragorn, my number 1, Celeborn number 2, Eowyn number 3, and this is Haldir number 6. So I don't want to talk about 6. I want to go in order and go to 4. So number 4 for me will be Gandalf the Grey, undoubtedly. This is, like I said earlier, a great Witch King counter. The way you want to spec him out, Mithrandir is an absolute necessity. Dump all 15 points in there and 7 points in Convener right away. First thing you should do every single time you have to put points into Gandalf the Grey. The next place you want to go, since you're fighting evil in the War of the Ring campaign, is White Council. 15 in there, 7 in here, 7 in here. Done. You need 2 in here to be able to activate Blindside so you get that stun. And then really from here, the rest of the way, usually people put 2 in Wizard and 1 in Surge. And I just happen to have a bunch of points left over, So I did 7 and Free People so that you mitigate another 14% damage on men, elves, dwarves, and hobbits. And then I had a couple of points left over, and right now I'm sitting here. I got 1 point in Fleeting Moments. That's the max I can do with only 2 points in the gray, so I think that makes sense to do. And then I was like, well, okay, I got 1 point left over. I could dump it in Wizard, but let's see how much of an impact, that 2% focus minus 1% might Pipeweed Connoisseur has on his stats. And I'll definitely be taking this out. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do it for you right now so you can see my stats here. 207 might, 362 focus, 101 speed. I'm just going to reset this now. And I'm just going to, because it takes literally like less than a minute to do. I already know that I'm going to be doing all of these. I already know that I'm going to do this, so I might as well just do it. I'm going to do 2 in here, 1 in here, 1 in here. I'm going to max this. I'm going to max this. I'm going to max this. And then I'm going to put 4 in here and 1 in there. And really, this is just so you get an extra couple points of negative defense during those first 3 rounds. Let's see how much of an impact that had on the stats. I mean, my might went from 207 to 208. My focus is 350. Yeah, it really didn't make much of a difference at all. So I think I agree with somebody I was chatting with about this the other day. That that point in Pipeweed Connoisseur is just kind of a waste. And I think it'll be more impactful in the Wizard. So for his items, I use the Elven Dirk for him because the way that I run Gandalf essentially is with like somewhere between 600 and 900 cataphracts up front, and then the rest all archers. If I'm not playing Lothlorien, then I'm going to be using sharpshooters in the back. Since I'm playing Lothlorien, I'm going to be using all March Wardens. And so I want to jack up ranged unit damage because similar to Celeborn, Gandalf has some pretty significant damage issues, which playing Lothlorien really solves because the March Wardens are by far the best light side archer in the game. Um, Even better than the Noldor long shots. They do more damage than the Noldor long shots, and they're much more durable than them. Partially because they're stun resistant, but also they just naturally have more defense and more health, I think, than the Noldor long shots are kind of like a glass cannon. So anyway, so this is a really good weapon for him because it's going to buff that the ranged might, and then the might focus speed and army speed on elves is helpful as well. For his chest, I used to have this chest on Legolas, and I brought it over on him because I wanted him to have more might, more focus. It increases his army defense, and then I have the Gallant ability on him. It just really jacks up his might. I'm trying to jack up Gandalf's might this season. I want to see how much damage I can get this guy to pump out. I took Legolas out of my rotation, really. So that's why when we get to Legolas, because he is in my top 10, he's just not in my top. He's not going to be my PvP. Want to be one of my PvP commanders. He's going to be a pather. For the helmet, I went with the Arnor Casque. More might, more focus. Some people might be like, why are you going for stun immunity on him? And really, honestly, I'm really just using this helmet for the stats. And if I get the stun immunity, great. If I don't, I'm not. It's a nice to have, not a requirement. Because I'm really trying to use Gandalf to counter Witch Kings or attack level 200 tiles and such like that early in the game. So I'm going to be using him to farm or kill Witch Kings. Or if I see some armies, because he's got White Council, if there are dark side folks that are running lots of orcs and Uruk-hai, then I'll use him against them just because he's going to cut through them. And then this guy, his fireworks, mucho range attack damage and another 9%. So between the Dirk and the fireworks, I buff range damage another 15%. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how hard he hits this season because I had pretty good success against a lot of Witch Kings last season, and I wasn't even nearly built as strong as I am this way. So I'm really looking forward to that. So those are my top 4 right there: Aragorn, Celeborn, uh, Eowyn, Gandalf. Number 5, my last PvP guy, it's going to be Gimli. And the way that you build Gimli, you got to have a whole bunch of points and experienced warrior buffs his damage, but don't prioritize that. Durin's blood is top priority. So your first points that you put in Gimli, no matter what, are Durin's blood. 15 straight there, 7 in whirlwind, and 7 in all in. That dramatically increases your command damage. It's necessary. You want to do 2 points in Lockbearer and a point in Protect Elves, so that then essentially your dwarves become tanks for elves. And the way that I run Gimli is basically like 2,500 to 3,000 guardians up front, and then a bunch of elves in the back. So I'll probably be using March Wardens, like maybe 1,000, 1,250, something like that. I don't know. I'll tinker with the ratios and stuff. You want more beef. You're not looking to get a whole bunch of damage out of those archers. Really, you're just trying to create a diversion so that Gimli can just wreck house. I mean, he does tremendous commander damage with this build. So essentially, we're just trying to keep his army in front of him alive as long as possible so that he can bust you in the face with his axe. You want that because then, like I said, this increases his attack, another 125% physical damage. If I had 2 more points in Gimli to put in Gimli, if I increase his reputation 2 more levels, they would go and hunt down, hands down. And then 2 points in Glittering Caves, and a point in Break Defenses, and Heavily Wounded. So you want to prioritize Heavily Wounded over Break Defenses, because this is what makes Gimli a Sauron counter right here, is that he stops healing. So that makes him really valuable against Saurons, especially if you can do something like this, where I put this helmet on him so that he can potentially mitigate some of the stun and madness immunity from a Sauron or a Witch King. It's only 50% chance. I'm getting there. I'm working on it. Man's only got so many resources to spend on the game. But I think this will be helpful. It'll be an interesting build for him. I've got a maxed out Warhammer. So he smacks hard, and he reduces defense by 30%. He's got a 50% chance of that, so it's pretty nice. And then he cleans debuffs in round 4 and recovers 35% HP with good old Erebor's Pride here. And on the chest piece, more might, more dwarf HP, more dwarf attack, which means really nothing unless you're going to be throwing the old axe throwers or something in the back instead of elves. And then the army defense for melee, another 4% or base 4 base stat. It's really nice. So he's not my strongest guy. He's not my sexiest guy, but he's going to do some work for me. And I'm not going to be afraid to use him, particularly against melee opponents. So if I come across not a Witch King or a Sauron, I'll definitely be itchy to use good old Gimli. But I'll throw him against the Sauron too. If I see a weakened Sauron, I'll throw him against them. I'm not going to be afraid of that. So those are my top 5 commanders that I'll be using for PvP. My 6th commander, I was saying before, is Haldir. That's because I have his R10 chest, which is really awesome. Particularly, I love using him on wooded areas. I have the same Elven Dirk on him that I have on Gandalf. I like to run a setup with him where I put basically like 100 Beorlings in front, and then the rest March Wardens in the back, which is why I have this helmet. And eventually I will get it leveled up more when I get more gold helmets. And then I use his harp, so he gets more elf speed, and then the elven ally damage dealt, another 3%. That's really good. That'll help boost the March Warden damage considerably. From a spec perspective, I don't really like the way I have him spec'd here, and I don't feel like spending another 20 gems So I'm just going to talk through it real quick. I'm going to take these 7 points out of Foresight, and if I don't have Bjorlings, I take 7 points out of Beast Training, and I throw them up here and down here. Then he becomes an absolute beast on, particularly on wooded tiles in a defensive position. Your ranged are going to take very little damage, or much less damage anyway. They can just go to town. I still like Armed Escort for the heal. Even though the heal ain't much, it's better than nothing. You want 1 point in March Warden Larian for that evade. And you want Guide for the stun immunity and the extra physical damage during the first 2 rounds. And then I like Sylvan Elf for that extra poison damage and that it lasts longer. And then Forced Agility is just an essential for him because you want those March Wardens to follow up. It does big damage. So even though it's only a 20% chance, when it procs, it's really, really good. And just because of, that I have semi-decent gear on him, I'll use him as my 6th. For my 7th commander, and she's going to just be kind of niche. I won't use her PvP a whole lot. I'm really intending to just use her to take tiles early in the game up until like 230s, maybe even some 260s. She's strong. She's just really, really strong. I have really good base focus on her. I have a really good carver on her, so she's going to do some damage for me. And I just threw this on her for the focus and hopefully mitigate a little bit of damage up front with the melee vigor. This is going to buff her damage a little bit with the courage. It's got focus and then extra army HP and the pipe as well. Focus, army HP, and then a little Healy heal, 10% Healy heal when units take damage for the first 4 times, which is really nice. From a spec perspective, the way that you gotta have Mistresses of Magic, and you need 7 and 7 in here. That just really increases their damage quite a bit. And then also you need to have her R5, and you need to have this maxed out, the Nenya's Guardian, because the extra 30% focus on top of an extra 15 base focus is just, it's stupidly overpowered. It really pushes her over the top. And then this heal's really good, and I threw a point in the magic barrier. And then more heals over here. So at some point I'll have more rep for her and be able to do more with her, but just at R5, she's not a priority for me to acquire rep for right now. To be honest, I'm trying to unlock Gilgalad just because he's ridiculous and overpowered as well. I don't have him yet. So she's kind of my 7th commander. She's like my bench commander. She's got some okay gear and she can do some stuff. And like if we just need one more decent hit on something PvP and it's gonna complete something for us or put us over the top, then I'll use her in a PvP situation. But all in all, she's gonna be just doing PvE stuff, taking tiles, pathing and stuff from me. All right, Commander 8 is going to be Dwalin. You can see I got his axe. It's only 1 star, no gold. I just threw this on him because I have it. It gives him might and speed. It's good. Might is good. And then I had these drums. I figured I'd use them on someone, so I threw them on him. 329 might. It's actually not too bad. With this, he might actually be perfectly viable in a PvP situation. It's just how much barracks do you have? What stage of the game are you in to be able to field 8 commanders at one given time? It's much better to keep things condensed down to 5, so that then you can just reinforce them real quickly and send them right back out there instead of sending. If I had to choose between sending Aragorn once and Dwalin once, or Aragorn twice, I'm going with Aragorn twice every time. It's just a smarter move because he's so much better geared. He's so much stronger against dark side. He's going to do more commander damage because his stats are higher because of his gear. And honestly, using a bunch of tier 2 knights to attack a bunch of tier 3 or tier 4 units, just like the amount of damage that's going to happen, like the cost of that battle is going to be significantly higher for your opponent than it is for you because knights are cheaper to make as a tier 2 unit. At any rate, we're going to go into the spec now. So, again, like Gimli, Durin's Blood, Whirlwind, all in. 7 out of 7, max him out, has to be done. For damage, you need a damage on him. Experienced Warrior, 100%. Hunt down, 100%. Collaboration, 100%. And then what I did with these last 9 points, I suppose I could have put them all in 9 in here, or try to do. I don't really like Longbeard. I toyed with that a little bit during season 1. It didn't really do anything for me. This isn't any good unless you're facing like Mumikills or something, so no point in that. So I just throw a couple points in Musician and then 1 point in Level-Headed, so that then in round 2 he's cleansing all debuffs. I think there's a lot of value in that in general in this game, so it's something you always want to kind of keep in the back of your mind. If you're taking a whole bunch of damage early from debuffs, then with Dwalin you can just cleanse them. He cleanses them all in round 2. There's no chance to cleanse or anything. He just removes one random debuff, and then that little heal in there too, which is nice. So there's a lot more value. Like this relief looks like it's going to give you some value because the healing stat is higher and it's modified by the focus stat, but your focus isn't going to be super high on him. He's a might hero. You want to put might on him, so there's really no value in relief. So I leave that blank and I just go all damage with him. And then these other 6 points is just purely to mitigate, so that, again, similar like what we were talking about with Gimli and Aragorn, you just want to keep your army alive, so that the longer the army is alive, the more time Dwalin has to just go nuts and do a bunch of damage. But I haven't had really a chance to test these twin axes. I'm kind of looking forward to that, but I don't have them really high, so he's deprioritized for now, but it's a project for later. When I need him, I'll work on him. All right, so that's 8 heroes, or commanders, I'm sorry. Number 9 I wanted to bring to your attention is Haldir, just strictly as a siege specialist. I'll be using him to do that when we're sieging keeps. So I just threw some gear on him I don't have enough to be able to melt these and upgrade, more valuable commanders' gears, so I throw them on him. Not really super important to even go through them because none of it really does anything. I guess this siege, this buff to Elven Siege could be potentially impactful, but really what you're looking for is just you want to make sure that you have the 7 points in logistics to increase the siege for anyone in your army by 7 points base, which is really quite significant. And then also you can do march speed, so it's really good. Throw a bunch of like T1 dwarves, like 5,000, 6,000 of them on him, and just go to town, and he'll do a bunch of siege damage for you. Be really good. Be really strong. All the other points I have in here are just for funsies. I've honestly never at any point during any of the first 3 seasons of this game maxed Hirgon to 50. I think maybe 35 was the highest I've ever gotten him. I basically just run him on tips and then siege with him. And then occasionally if I have eagles, I'll use him as a pather because that extra march speed can make him go stupid fast with eagles. But that's about it. That's about all I use him for. And who is the 10th commander I wanted to talk about? Ah, yeah, that's right. Legolas. Of course. Duh. And so I just threw a bunch of stuff on Legolas as well. He's my 10th commander. He's going to be a pather. He might do a little bit of commander damage and stuff, but he's not really set up for PvPing at all. I threw the spear on him because I'll just throw like a bunch of cataphracts or something on him, so he can take some benefit of the mounted unit speed, the massive breastplate, army defense, large unit defense. I might throw a bunch of Ents on him if I have Ents. and then let him go to town. I have the fiddle that gives him some extra ent speed. That's usually what I like to do with Legolas is just throw a big old ent bomb. But and I had some success with it last season. I had some rounds where he had 300,000 damage, and the ents just soaked all the damage, and he just went to town behind them there. But he had a lot more might. He won't do that kind of damage set up like this. But just to give you a rundown of how you should be allocating your talent points for him, you need 15 out of 15 in Elven Prince, 7 out of 7 in Heartseeker, 7 and 7 in Dual Blows, absolutely 100%. And then you need to dump all the next points into Greenleaf, Attack Vitals, and then finally Mirkwood Ambush. And then if you have a couple of points left over, this is a nice to have, the Dwarf Friend. So this essentially is kind of exactly the same mechanic as what Gimli had, where now you can put dwarfs up front, and they will tank for you and protect your elven units in the back, which of course can prolong the battle, take the onus off of the commander, and Legolas can just go to town. I hope that you found this video insightful in some way. I apologize for it being entirely too long. And I'll probably chop it up into snippets and post each chunk as a separate video. I'll do like a part 1, part 2, part 3, and chunk it in like 10 minutes. Um, Give me a like and a comment if you feel like it. If you don't, I hope you learned something either way, and this helps you in your journey through Middle Earth and Lord of the Rings: Rise to War. My thanks to the developers for creating a really fun game, and to all my teammates who tolerate all of my nonsense. Cheers.